So, one of the greatest challenges that I face in teaching Tantra or Tantric philosophy is having to work your way through that haze of misconceptions and misinformation that surround the subject. I mean, all those weird and wonderful stories that have come to be associated with the subject of Tantra. I'll give you a tiny little example. One of the most fascinating incidents in the history of India is about the night runners of Bengal. You may or may not have heard of them, but the phenomenon of the night runners of Bengal took place in India in the time period leading up to the uprising of 1857. The night runners, as the name suggests, were men. They were a group of men who would run at night in complete silence from one village to the next, carrying a pile of rotis on their head, rotis being Indian bread. So these men would run in complete silence at night from village to village, carrying a pile of rotis on their head. And everywhere they stopped, they would deliver just the one message: Sab lal ho jayega. Everything will turn red. That's it. Now, this went on for a considerable period of time, and then one day it just stopped, as suddenly and inexplicably as it had started. To this date, nobody actually knows the facts behind these men. Nobody knows who they were, what they were doing, what was the message they were delivering, where they came from, where they disappeared to. We have absolutely no factual knowledge, but as you can imagine, there has been endless conjecture about them. And because the rotis were supposed to have originated from a Shiva temple in Bengal, there's a certain level of tantric associations with these men, and therefore some of the explanations are a little bit, shall we say, unusual. But of the unusual and bizarre explanations, the most far-fetched, and I would go as far as to say the most ridiculous one that I have ever heard, is one that's been offered to us by the author of a book called The Jewel in the Lotus. I should also add that from a personal point of view, I think The Jewel in the Lotus is one of the most unenlightened books I have ever come across. But the author suggests that the men running through the night with the rotis on their head are actually symbolic of a tantric sexual ritual. They're actually symbolic of tantric ritual sex, where the man, the body of the man represents the phallus, and the rotis represent the yoni, the vulva. Now, there is a great deal in Tantra that we will never understand, and a great deal that we'll never know. But nowhere have I ever come across the idea that rotis are symbolic of the yoni. Bread is not and has not been talked about as the female sexual organ. Not everything in Tantra is about sex. But as you can see, this is the tiniest example of some of the misconceptions that exist around the subject, of the level of work that we have to do to remove these misconceptions, this misinformation, so that we can actually gain a better understanding of the subject.